Hey guys, welcome back to Piddlers in the Shop. Today we're going to be in the house. It's entirely way too hot to be outside. So I brought this inside so we could get it finished. So this will be a part 2 to our coffee table redo. So we're going to be using the Minwax color changing wood filler. It is pink when it's wet and then it turns white as it dries, so you know when it's drying you can sand it down. So we're just going to fill in these pinholes and then some of these gaps that we have, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that y'all had a really good view of what I was filling. As you can see, we didn't get our cuts exactly how we needed them, so we have some gaps, and that's really okay. Wood filler is really your friend when that happens. So I'm just going to go through, fill in these gaps on the corners, and then some of these nail holes. I'll show you on this one, and then I'll complete the rest off camera. You really want to make sure you pack it in there and kind of wipe it back. Having nails does help. And mind you, this is color changing and it is also paintable. So once it dries and we get it all sanded down, one, you won't be able to see the crack in it, and two, we'll be able to paint right over it. Sometimes you can get this filled in right the first time and you won't have to go back. Sometimes as you sand back, you'll see that maybe it didn't go all the way where you needed it to go, so you have to do it again. I like to kind of overfill. That way there's a better chance that I got it the first try. As you can see, I'm trying to cut these corners in, and really thinking about maybe caulking some of this to make it even more seamless. This part right here, I don't know if you can see that, where this crack is right here in the outer frame. I'm not worried about it because I did a wash on this, and if I were to go in and fill that in, it just wouldn't cover as nicely with the paint wash as it would with, you know, regular paint. So we're gonna leave those like that. Okay, I'm gonna go do these pinholes and then we will be back to finish the rest. Stay tuned. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in with some of this paintable caulking, and I'm just gonna fill in the gap along the table right here. So I'm just gonna show you a little bit of what that looks like. I won't make you sit through all of it, but if I do it right, you just go along the table. I know I'm going out of frame here, but and then you just take your finger and you can rub it along those edges. And then I also have a wet rag to go along and clean it up. So I'm gonna go along the whole table and do that, and then I'll come back and give you all a close-up view of what that looks like. Okay guys, we're back. It's a little messy, but that's okay. We will take care of that shortly. So I'm just showing you where I went along the edges and filled it in with some caulking and wiped it back. I will go in once all of this dries and sand it and make it all smooth so it is paintable. I also went along this outside edge. There was a little bit of a gap over here, so I decided to go in and fill that also. So we are just going to wait for all of this to dry. Then we will give it a good sanding, make sure everything is smooth, and then we are going to paint. So I decided to go along the wood that we added to the table and fill in some of these cracks. So I will put y'all down here so y'all can see as I do that. So I don't know how well you can see that on camera, but there's cracks in this wood that we used. So I'm just going to take some of this wood filler and fill those in. So when we paint it, it's nice and smooth. That's also another good thing about priming your piece with a white primer or whatever. I think you can also get it tinted gray. That you'll be able to see if you miss any of these, and you can go back and refill those. Sometimes you can even rub your hand across and kind of fill any grooves or any other cracks in the table. Go. Now, if you don't mind that more rustic look, you really wouldn't have to worry about doing this, but I started doing it, so I carried on. And even if you weren't painting this wood, if you liked the wood look, which some people do, this wood's a little rough, but say you were, this color of this wood filler, actually once you sand it back, you can't see it as much in this wood, so it really wouldn't look that bad. I don't see much of them down here, so I think that's going to be good. I'm going to let all of this dry, sand it back, and then I'm going to tape this off, the edges off. That way we can come in with some paint and be able to paint without getting it on this outside edge here. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Okay guys, hope you can see me. So now most of this filling that I did in the middle is dry, so I'm just going to go through and we're going to sand it down. When you're sanding your filling on a flat surface like this, the only really, by the end of it, the only really part of the filler that you should see is what's inside the crack that you filled. So there really shouldn't be any filler on the top part. It should be all flush. You shouldn't fill it if you rub your hand across it. So. Okay, so like that. I'll put you closer here in a minute so you can see, but I'm sure you can tell that spot is not there anymore. It is just in the crack that I filled it in. So I'm gonna go along and finish sanding. They're all pretty dry. They were pretty thin. They weren't very thick layers, so I'm gonna go finish sanding them. I'm just using a sanding block from Walmart. So I think one side is like 400, and this is old, by the way. They're very reusable. You can even wash them, let them dry, and reuse them. I've reused this many times. But I think one side's like 400 grit and one's like 250. So they're very, not so harsh. You don't need anything that's gonna, you're not trying to go through a finish. You're just trying to get this thin layer off. should always go along the wood grain. I'm not very good about doing that, but you should. I hope y'all can see this. Right here because they're so close. I hope y'all can see that. It's harder to go along the wood grain because you're up against the board. Typically not a job for indoors. It creates a lot of dust. But we're in Texas. And some people might think I should be wearing a mask, but not too worried about it whenever I'm doing hand sanding like this. If I was using an Orbital sander or a sander, I would have a mask on, but I wouldn't be using that in the house, so. Going along those edges, kind of cleaning up some of the wood filler that's in there. Oh, and I don't know if you can see it. I'll tell you in a minute. Sometimes your dust gets in tucked away and it's kind of hard to see exactly what you're sanding. So my advice is to move that away, or in a minute I'm going to get the vacuum and kind of clean it away so I can see what I'm doing. And this is what I was going to tell you. I told you I wasn't filling those in because it'd be easier to see whenever I do, because I did a wash on this, which I'll probably go over it because it's been a little while. But I decided it looked better with it filled in. And I don't think you can be able to see it that bad because the wood filler is so light. So we'll see how that turns out. I think I've put y'all through enough of this horrible noise. So I'm gonna finish sanding this up, sanding this down, get it cleaned up, and then we'll come back so you can see how I start to paint it. We'll be right back. Okay, so I have taped off the table, cleaned it up, sanded. So now we're gonna add our primer, which technically I don't need a primer because the paint I'm gonna use is a 3-in-1. It's a primer, paint, and a top coat on all included. But since this has so many variations of color, and then this right here, I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if it's water damage or what. Not water damage, but it's just been in the shop for so long. So I'm going to use a shellac-based primer, Ben shellac-based primer, and do probably just one coat. I have a roller and then a brush to get along the edges. So let's get started. Actually, let's see how well the roller gets in all these creases. Anyway. May take 2 coats actually, just seeing how this wood is soaking all this up. I've used that before. Go along the edges with this brush. This is why you tape off, so you don't have to be particular about painting or cutting in. I'm gonna have to clean that roller again. It's not coating very well. I don't know if maybe when I washed it, it didn't get all the water out or what. So we're gonna focus on the trim and the outside right now. I have recently started spraying my furniture, but since it's with a paint sprayer. But since it's been so hot outside, I haven't been able to do that. And I don't even know if my paint would last that long in a paint sprayer in this heat. It's unbearable. I don't know if you're from Texas, but if you are, we're all praying for each other, right? You ever heard that song, Pray for Rain? Okay, so I'm gonna see what's going on with my roller, get that cleaned up, and then I'll come back in and complete this coat, and then I'll probably catch y'all whenever I go to put the actual paint color on. But we're gonna get this covered in primer, probably just one coat. See y'all in a minute. Okay guys, so we are back. This is the paint I'm gonna be using. It's the All-in-One by Beyond Paint, and this is the color Sand, I believe. Yes, so it's the color Sand. I don't know if you can see that. So the good thing about this paint is it is very durable. It says on here, no stripping, no sanding, no priming. It's best for furniture, cabinets, countertops, and more. So it's a very durable paint. I have already sanded this back and kind of got it as smooth as I can. So we're just gonna get started. This paint they recommend in the corners where a roller brush can't get, that you stipple around the corners or around the sides. So that's what I'm gonna be doing for this part. So let's get started. It's my makeshift paint tray because I'm out. So you just want to stipple around these areas where the roller will not be able to get into. This paint has pretty good coverage, but I probably will do 2 coats. Take my roller, get it as covered as I can. I'm gonna go along here just to smooth out what I just put down. You can already see how good of coverage it's getting. But you can see in these dark, I'm sure you can see in these darker spots, it's, oh no, there you go. Spoke too soon, but it will, I'll probably do a second coat. I think you'll probably need it once it dries down. I am not the best with a roller. When I first started doing furniture, I used a brush, which, you know, does leave a lot of brush strokes. That's why we kind of started on the paint sprayer. So I'm also kind of new to the roller, so I'm kind of learning best practices with rollers too. And the reason I'm going in with the roller so quick after stippling is because it leaves almost like a little texture. So I'm just trying to smooth that out. Y'all can see this, I think you can. I think I underestimate how much that camera, the wide angle of that camera can reach. So we're just gonna go in here and finish with this first coat. here I have children coming in and out of bedrooms. So this paint is the same color I painted the bottom of this coffee table. And the outside trim, the wood on the outside, I sanded it down to bare wood, and then I added water to some of this paint and did a wash, which I plan on redoing. It's been a little while since I did that. So I'm just gonna probably revamp that when I'm done with this middle part. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go and kind of do long strokes to make sure I don't have any breaks in my paint. It might be hard to get out sanding, but yeah, just looking at this now, it's definitely going to need that second coat, but the coverage is pretty good. I get heavy-handed with this roller too. I have to remind myself, like, you have to go apply so much pressure. And I also just like to go along and make sure there's no globs of paint anywhere. Like up here. You can see that. Okay, so I'm gonna let this coat dry, and then we'll come back for the second coat. Okay guys, so now we are going to do a wash on the outside edge. After filling in the cracks, it did leave a little bit of yellowing, so I'm just gonna kind of even that out by doing a wash. So when you want to do a wash, all you're doing is adding water and paint, mixing that. If you want it to be pretty translucent, then you need to add more water. If you want it to be darker, then you add less water. So basically you can't really give a ratio. It's kind of what you want, what works for you. So I'm gonna start by opening this, maybe. Probably should have done that off camera. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little bit to my cup. And then we're just gonna add a little bit of water to that. So I'm just gonna mix that up. You can see it makes it pretty runny. And I think I'm gonna start with that. I would say if you're not sure of how much of a wash you want, I would start with it pretty thin. That way you can build up from there. You can add layers. It's always easier to add than it is to remove. So we're gonna, let me back y'all up here. Start on this corner. Okay. So I'm going to start by adding my wash. Sorry, I have kids going in and out of the house, so you might hear them. You could go along the whole edge before wiping back. I typically like to do little little spots. Just how a preference, but you could always do one full side and then white back. Let's see if you can see that. Okay, kind of moved y'all to give y'all a different angle to see. And side note, anyone that has animals, you will get animal fur, dog hair on all your furniture. Make sure you have plenty of paper towels. You're gonna need them. Also, remember to get your edges. Probably gonna let that, since that yellowing from the wood filler is there, I'm probably gonna let it sit next to the edges a little bit longer than on the actual other part of the wood. All right. So like I said, just going along, adding the paint wash. Put some down here in that corner and along the edges. Let it sit there a little bit longer. Making sure I'm getting the outside edges as well. Okay. Also do recommend wearing gloves while you're doing this, because your hands do get pretty messy from touching your paper towels. So I'm already noticing that you can still see some of the, I don't know how well it's picking out on camera, but right along here you can still see some of the yellowing. And I'm not a fan of that, so I'm gonna add some paint and make my paint wash a bit thicker. Not as translucent. Probably should have put an apron on. I'm ruining a really good dress. Also, it's not a bad idea to have some stir sticks, but I don't have that with me right now. Let that sit a bit before I wipe it back. Better. It's giving the coverage I want, but you can still see that wood grain. So that's why I said in the beginning, you know, less is more, because you can always build on it if it's not as much coverage. Okay, so I'm gonna finish doing that, and then we'll come back and I will show y'all when I'm putting the top coat on. Okay, so it is now time to put the sealer on this coffee table. So the paint I use is a 3-in-1. It's a primer, paint, and top coat all in one. But since this is a coffee table, I have small children, people are going to be putting drinks. We've already done a puzzle on it actually. It's going to get a lot of daily use. I want to seal this and make it really protected on the top. I'm not going to do the bottom part, just the top. And I'll probably do at least 3 coats just to make sure it's good and sealed. I have seen other furniture restorers use sponges to really put a nice smooth top coat on the pieces. I've not tried it before, so I thought since this is mine and I'm not selling it, we'll give it a try. So I'm gonna just cut and probably do it out here so I don't get a lot of fallout on the table. I did wipe this table off. I still have my rag to make sure if I run across any lint or dog hair that it is wiped off and not sealed into the final top coat. So I'm using the Minwax polyurethane in a clear matte finish. I don't know why, but I just prefer a matte finish over a eggshell or satin finish. I just think it turns out prettier. I just like matte. I'm even more prone to the chalk paints than other paint just because I like that matte finish. So let's start sealing. I'm going to start in the middle and then work my way on the outsides. And let's get started. Just dipping that in there a bit. Like I said, this is the first time I'm using this sponge method. So it's going to be a learning experience for us both. You really want to make sure any buildup of the top coat you see, you kind of wipe it out. You don't want to dry it like it's dry like that, because it will dry kind of clumpy and you'll have to go back and sand it down smooth. Which in return, if you have to sand a lot, you could be taking your paint with you, just creating a lot of extra work for yourself. Okay, I'm gonna call this top coat good for the middle piece and start going on to the outside. And go along these edges too. I'm sure this table is gonna get bumped into quite a bit being in the middle of our living room. You can see I'm just doing a nice thin layer. going to finish doing the other two sides, and then we will do our second coat. Okay, so we're going to start on, I've already done 2 coats. We're going to do our third, but I wanted y'all to see that in between the clear coats, the top coats, I am doing a light sanding, and that's just in case if any bubbles or any lint or anything get into your clear coat, it just smooths it out and makes a smoother finish. So I'm not sure what grit this is. It just says the fine grit, so it's probably like a 200, 220. But you could even get 400 and in between that range. You're not trying to sand down to the bare finish, you're just doing a light back and forth sand. So we're gonna do that, and then we'll put our third coat on, and then she will be done. You can always use your hand and kind of feel, see if there's any rough spots you need to smooth out. And then you always want to have a lint-free cloth, or any kind of cloth really, and just wipe back all that dust, because you don't want that in your finish.
Yeah, and I can hear see you.
Don't touch it.
Hi.
Get in. Get in.
Okay, so now we're just going to do our clear coat. We've got it all sanded down and smooth. So I'm just going to do our last and final coat. It should go pretty quick. I will say it's always good to kind of get eye level with your piece. When I was sitting down here, I could kind of see a small part of that didn't get as much clear coat as the rest. So I'm going to kind of focus in that area. Good. You just go over like you did the other two. Easy as that. All right, I'm gonna finish putting this coat on, and then we will come back and see some after shots. And I'll try, I don't have a picture of what this looked like in the beginning, but I'm gonna find some that were close to what it looked like and put that in there. So that's coming right up.